I like to say I retired being retired to be inspired. I got up this morning, my feet hit the ground. I said, thank you. I woke up. My book, when you open it up, is a quote from Maya Angelou. Every storm runs out of rain. You see every storm behind it. No matter how bad it is, the sun is shining. The storms in our lives are the same. What the storm does, just like the storm from the sky, is creates fertile ground to plant. The storms in our lives create the same fertile ground. What I ask people, what are you going to plant? What I really want to remind people of is this idea of not living in the past. It's so easy to do. When you're there, you're not here. Be here now. So what that led to was me creating this keynote and coaching people to see that your smile, a hello, sitting with someone that's in need or in pain is a philanthropic gesture. You don't have to have your name on a building, write a check. When you give that smile or hello and you have an expectation, it's no longer a philanthropic gesture. It's when you do it without expectation of anything in return. And I'll share with you something that's very simple for me that I remind myself. If nothing else is true, it feels better.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Sincerely Show. I'm your host, Catherine Duchek. The Sincerely Show is a place. It's a journey. And it's a movement. It's a movement towards living our lives more sincerely human. It's a journey. It's a journey that walks through the arc of our human lifetimes. An arc that often includes hardship, includes awakening, and includes moments that cause us to be humbled and become more sincerely human. And it's a place. It's a place that is loving, kind, judgment-free, and curious. Welcome to The Sincerely Show. Again, I'm your host, Catherine Duchek, and I am so happy to welcome Tom to our episode today. Tom LeNoble, it is so good to see you. Welcome.
Kate, I am thrilled to be with you, and I love that word curious because curiosity has been something that's been with me since I was a little kid. It's got me in trouble a few times, and it has served me well. So I love being curious with you today.
Oh, well, let's be curious, Tom. You have a remarkable story, and let's start off by getting to know you today. Describe for us who you are today in a way that is authentically you.
Yes.
And then, we'll go on a journey together.
Wonderful. Well, I like to say I retired being retired to be inspired. I had this great corporate career. I led customer service for MCI, a long-distance carrier that broke up all the Bell companies. I then was the head of customer service for Walmart.com and spent far too much of my life in Bentonville, Arkansas. I then was the global service director for and ran operations for Palm, the Palm Pilot Trio people. And was sitting at my desk one day, and I got a phone call from a recruiter from a little unknown company called Facebook. Facebook was still in colleges. I had no idea what Facebook was. I told the recruiter I was working my dream job and thanked them and hung up the phone. Well, a buddy of mine who I used to work with, who is now a VC in the Valley, called and said, I referred you to Facebook and you didn't talk to them. And so I thought, what is Facebook? So he said, just talk to them, do me a favor. And I thought, this guy's never asked me to do a favor, so I'm going to. So I re-engaged, and a great story it is. I interviewed with Mark Zuckerberg when he was 19 years old. Dressed in my suit while going to their little office over a Chinese restaurant, which If you want to hear that story later, I'll tell you. But I went to Facebook and set up all their initial customer operations, the relationship with the National Suicide Hotline, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, fraud, some other things while I was there. Then I was the chief support officer of a company that's now the backbone of the Geek Squad remote support, had my own consulting business, worked for a dating site of all things that Match.com bought, and I managed that merger. And then boards would send me in as either the COO or the VP of HR into their startups to fix their perceived problem, which was, by the way, never the problem. And then I fell in love, got married, and traveled the world. I pulled back a bit, but I knew I had more to share. Today, I'm a confidential advisor to many founders, executives, nonprofit leaders, and professionals. I have a book that is an award-winning bestseller, My Life in Business Suits, Hospital Gowns, and High Heels. I'm a professional speaker. I have my own podcast, Opening Pathways, and I'm the CEO of the Academy for Coaching Excellence, a 24-year-old coaching academy, and we train coaches around the world.
Amazing.
What I should share with you is that my real mission in life is I'm a philanthropist. I support underserved communities, youth in the arts, first-gen students, today's women's issues, and other things that I'm passionate about. And through everything I just told you, I've had 2 life-threatening illnesses. The first I was told was terminal. I've lived with metastatic cancer the last 14 years, and as you can see, I'm still here.
Wow. That's a lot and profound to take in, Tom. The first question that occurred to me as you were describing your background is the title of your book. Do you want to unpack the title of your book?
Yes, I'd love to. You know, the reason I'm like a really private man, and I've kept all these secrets all these years. And I wrote this book about 15 years ago, and it was so cathartic. I put it in the closet in my office and forgot about it. And I have this year in practice I've been doing for over 35 years, and we could talk about that later, but this book came up in it, and I had made this decision. I'm either going to run with it or I need to trash it because it desperately needed to be edited. And I made a decision to run with it. Every door possible opened. Magic happened. But this book for the reader, it's a memoir that crosses over into self-help, is to help people understand that who we are today is the sum parts of who we've been in our life. And some of those parts may be private. We may feel shameful for them. They may be outrageous, or we just think people wouldn't understand. But indeed, you would not be who you are today without all those parts. My life in business suits, you just heard about. My life in hospital gowns, you know, that flimsy piece of fabric that doesn't tie well in the back, you just heard about. And yes, there's a part about high heels.
Are you going to tell us, or are we going to move on in the conversation?
Sure, I'm ready to tell you if you want to know. So it's great because when we talk about, maybe if we get into early life, there was a point in life where, you know, I think I was a little lost about what I was going to do. And I had moved out of school. I graduated from high school on June 9th and was in college June 12th. So I think it's fair to say that I wanted to get out of my little small town and out of the place that I was living. And I was 17. I was one of those kids that started school early. And I remember going into my first gay bar. A few of us went to this gay bar, and in this little small town, unlike many gay bars of the town that were very segregated with men, women, leather, all these different genres of people, everybody was under one roof. And I remember walking in that door and having this overwhelming feeling that I had found something so true that I remember I felt it physically. Well, you can ask me more about that later, but I ended up meeting someone there. And my first partner in life was the first Miss Central Florida, and who was very much a boy man out of that persona. And as the time progressed, there was a talent show one night about a year later, and some buddies and I, probably after a few beers, said we should enter this talent show. And we did. Well, one of them was horrible. The other two, this best friend since childhood, we had been in drama club. We were international thespians. We were back on the stage. We brought the house down. I think his name was Sally Summers. I don't even remember if I had a name, but we brought the house down, and the show director, which if anybody knows about drag, became my drag mother, who named me Rita Dayworth, everybody's day girl. And thus I said to myself, I'm back on a stage. I could use to make a little money as a starving student. And what happened next was working 4 nights a week, 2 shows a night with this persona, traveling around the South and pageants, all of it. But there was a part of it that was a little scary, is I had become someone else. And I was more comfortable being that someone else than I was being me. And while it was a great time and I had a lot of fun and I put on some great, great performances, at one point, I knew that that path, not because I had a judgment about the path, but for me personally, that was not going to be the journey as I shifted gears.
Wow. So you knew, as much as you felt peace in that persona, you knew it wasn't your true self.
Yes, I knew that I've known since a little kid there was something for me to do in this world. And like many of us, I clawed, scratched, ran, succeeded a few times, fell flat on my face. But at that time, I knew that I was going down a path of being so comfortable in that persona that I could have become that person and lost me. The two people were not the same. They were very, very different people. And as a result, I made the decision that Rita needed to go to the background and Tom needed to come out and find out what he was supposed to be doing in this world. I remember I moved to Miami and I had worked in a teaching hospital in Gainesville, Florida. And so I moved to Miami and got a real job in this Jackson Memorial Hospital. And when I got there, I was living in this house and I took Rita and put her in the attic. So it's kind of funny because years later, when I moved, I forgot that Rita was in the attic. And one day I had this memory that Rita was in the attic and I had this really good moment of humor of thinking what happened when those people found Rita in the attic. I fantasized about what that must have been like to find all of her dresses, her makeup, and everything. And the only thing I regretted was there was a few of those dresses that I could have used later in life.
Wow. I'm internalizing this because, I didn't understand my wholeness until around age 50. And I didn't know that I was only bringing 70% of myself to the world, that there was another 30%, and whether those percentages are right or not, I didn't really know that I was depriving myself of big parts of me because I had built walls. How old were you when you realized that Tom needed to come forward?
I'll say I reclaimed Tom. I was probably around 25, 26.
Wow. Tom, let's go back. Because we will talk about these big health challenges that you face, but give us some context. Give us some context of your childhood, your family background.
Yeah.
You talked about we are all a collection of, a lot of things. I describe it as there's our lived experience self, there's our physical and inherited self, and then there's our essential self, which whether you're spiritual or not, most of us will not argue the fact that when that baby's born, there's energy that is uniquely attributed to that baby. And, for me, it's my curiosity, it's my pattern builder, systems thinker, it's my playfulness, it's my lovingness, it's my sensitive side. All of those energies are what makes me who I am, that really don't have a lot to do with my lived experience self or even my physical or inherited self. It's just something in the core of me. So I like to describe humans as dimensions of human uniqueness, visible and invisible dimensions of human uniqueness. And it's all of these dimensions that make us unique and beautiful beings in this world. So let's understand, where you come from. Let's understand, your childhood, and then let's go through the journey and eventually talk about these challenging moments that really, really challenged you.
Yes, yes. Well, I grew up in a shack. In fact, we fondly called it the shack. That was what we named it. My grandfather built this one-bedroom house in Florida, and my brother and I shared the bedroom. My mother and father's bedroom was the living room, although we never saw it as their bedroom. It was always the living room. We had no hot water. My father boiled vats of hot water on a kerosene stove that I can smell as I say those words. And there was a pecking order to the baths, and being the baby, I was the last, except on my birthday. I got to be first. We had no refrigerator. He brought home literally a block of ice every day to put in the ice box. And I didn't know any different. It was my house. We were very proud of it. I had very loving parents. There was a lot of love in the house. Drama occasionally, of course, but there we were, and it was the four of us. My grandmother, Minnie Ida, did come with us, live with us once. She was the one that ended up getting messages through the fan, who ended up at a different place at some point, but she was there for a while in this house. But I remember going to school. I was one of those that started when I was 5. And after a few weeks at school, I came home and had a few realizations. Now, when I say it in my brain as I speak it today, remember, it was a different mindset when I was 5, but it meant something very simpler. I came home and I knew as I looked around the shack that this was very different than the people I was interacting with now at school, that what I was experiencing was not the same. What I also knew was that was not going to be what my life was like. And I also knew at 5, there was something very, very different about me. There was something different about things I was attracted to, things that I liked, how I looked at people. There was something in that little 5-year-old mind that happened that way. We went on from that, and I had an older brother. He was 6 years and a day older than me. And it was odd because he too turned out to be gay. So I think we never knew what that meant. Obviously, that was never anything in our back then discussed in a family. But I think just the energy of it, we were close, but not too close. And I was born, he started school, I started school, he left. So it was till later in life was an interesting relationship. But my mother was a charter member of her church, was a Sunday school teacher. I was in church every week. My father never went to church, which is an interesting story later, but I was there. And there I was, the four of us in this existence. And as I went through early years, first grade, I was a rebellious child. My brother was very shy and quiet, and here I came along and challenged everything back to that curiosity thing. And I'm one of those people today, even today, that when you say something is impossible or tell me I can't do something, there's a little voice that crawls up and whispers in my ear and says, "Watch this."
I know that person.
But yeah, I'm sure you have. First grade, Miss McClellan, I sat by there. I had these cubby holes in a bathroom, and I sat by them. And she had this little sign on the bathroom, and you turned it on red when you went in there and green when you came out. So this will share my personality, and then I'll pause a little bit. But when the little girls would go in there and they would put it on red, I would reach over and turn it on green. People would walk in, everybody would scream, and I would giggle. Well, I got caught. So that year in first grade, in the class picture, I'm sitting by that bathroom. For the rest of grammar school, I'm on the opposite side of the room. But, I had a lot of trouble in first, second, and third grade that finally fourth grade, Miss Barrett recognized that I was bored. I finished my work quickly, so she gave me a little garden outside the door that I could go to when I finished my work. That started making a big change in me, even though it was about the same time I started getting bullied.
Wow. Talk about that, and talk about your experience with feeling different inside the home and in school and
Yeah.
beyond.
Well, I knew there was something different about me. And when the more I interacted and we grew up, as we know, kids can be wonderful and they can also be brutal. And I was a bit of a sissy. So I was getting teased, getting chased, getting beaten up. My mother had me in a nursery school that, believe it or not, I stayed there till I think I was 14. She was a smothering mother. In fact, I pretended I worked there because I was so embarrassed about it. We lived 6 blocks from it, 6 blocks. But I had to wait till she got off work. But as time went on, things started happening. Like I remember I got a little older and my dad took me and I tried out for this county-wide softball team. There were boys from all over this huge county, and I was one of 3 boys in the end that was not chosen for a team. And as we walked away, my father, I could feel him trying to be supportive, but I was supporting myself. I remember saying to myself, well, that didn't work. Let's look at another avenue, which could have taken me down. Other things happened. Like I remember my dad took me, he was a big hunter and had a lot of guns. Later he did it with cameras, but then. And so, that's what he envisioned for both me, my brother and I. My brother wasn't interested. He took me to the sand dunes. I was about 9 and was going to teach me how to shoot my first gun. And there we were. He put this pistol in my hand. He showed me what to do. I shot this gun in the sand dune. I looked at the gun. I looked at him. I handed him the gun and said these words: "Don't ever ask me to do that again."
Wow.
At 9. I was very involved in church. It was like an outlet. I was the president of youth group. Believe it or not, at about age 14, I was even doing the Sunday service once a month. Everybody thought I was going to be a minister.
Uh-huh.
And I had a grandmother who, my father's mother, got very ill and came to live with us in the shack. We had moved next door. A family moved out and we bought that house. So now we lived. That's a wild story, but we moved. My grandmother lived in the shack and I was taking care of her because there was nobody else. I would get home, and I would have to take care of her. I was doing things I should not have been doing at that age, but there was no one else to do it. And we were very, very close. And I remember at 16, as I was turning 16, there was something about this existence at church that I knew didn't agree with something about me. I wasn't clear about it yet, but I knew that it wasn't at all in sync. I also was aware at the time that we had people across the street that were Baptist, a Lutheran church down the street. There were people in the family that were Catholic that all believed in the same thing, but thought they were better than each other. At that point, I got a little wild and decided to start straying from the church. And about that time at 16, I started experimenting with things. And I'm proud to say I never got caught. I'm proud to say
Curiosity is quite a thing, Tom,
yeah.
as you know and I know. My mother would go. My father worked in the earliest years. My father would go work in a factory, and my mother would tend to the farm. And again, we were quite humble as well. And I learned to crawl out of the crib at a very young age, and I knew every nook and cranny of the house, including trying to find the man in the radio and being disappointed that I couldn't find him, through to every corner of my mother's dressers. So my mother called me Snoopy, and she says, "You're going to get yourself into trouble."
My nickname was Varmint.
Varmint.
That was my nickname that my grandfather, the first time I walked in their house as a little kid big enough to walk and started doing what you just said of exploring their whole house, he yelled out, "There's a varmint in the house," and that stuck the rest of my life.
Aw. Aw. So go talk about, that's probably a reasonable segue to bullying. What was, so here you are, I'm pausing with our guests to really help us. And what I'm feeling, Tom, is if I take these three selves: lived experience, physical and inherited, and essential self. At an early age, your essential self was like wanting to be out into the world. And so here we've got this extremely curious soul, and we've got this incredibly expressive soul, and a courageous soul, and the same soul that never wanted to touch a gun again because of a level of love and empathy that's within you, within your essence. So take us now into school, and how did that play out?
I think what happened, Kate, was I was being bullied. There was already a service level essence about Tom. There was something about me about caring for others. Sort of what led to what we talked about earlier of Rita started about then, except what it looked like was, I remember being in class and I was dating a girl. Well, first of all, you should know in 5th grade when I was being bullied, this will tell you how creative I am. I decided the only way to survive this, I had to figure something out. So I went to this girl named Dee Dee Collins in my class. She had failed 5th grade twice, so she was literally a foot taller than the rest of us. She was what was called a badass. So I made this deal with Dee Dee that if I give you my brownie every day and let you wear my watch, will you be my girlfriend? And she said yes. Nobody bullied me. Nobody came near me until Dee Dee said to me one day, "I don't like your watch and I don't want your brownie anymore." And then it all started again. But back to where we are. I know.
So you're also innovative, which will bring us to your corporate career.
Yes. More than once. So, but I'm in probably a junior in high school, and I'm dating this girl who's in the chorale. I'm in the chorale. I'm in the drama club. The chorus was a special group in the chorus. And she had this long blonde hair. And my first drug to experience with was orange sunshine. And so my first experience, because I don't do anything halfway, I decided the only way to experience this was to do the orange sunshine 5 days a row in school. And so that's what I did. And I would sit in this one class with her and I would braid her hair. And I remember now, poor Gail, she got in trouble for me braiding her hair and was sent to the principal's office. Nobody ever did anything to me who was sitting there higher than a kite. I mean, I got through high school. I did well. Like I said, no one ever caught me at anything. Then I went from that I started skipping lunch, which was a big deal because my mother worked in the school system. And I remember she said to me one day, "How can you do this? You can't do this. I need to tell your father." And I knew I could smooth that over before that happened. I said, "Yeah, the food's so bad." But I started smoking weed. and which became a big part of my life. And so when I got out of school and took that journey to Gainesville in those few short days, that was already happening. And I think it was the beginning. That change that happened around 16 or 17 was in my book, the out of control part of my life. Now, I want to be clear. I had a lot of fun. I actually wish I could remember more of it, but I had a lot of fun. And I went off to school and it became more of a party. I don't know how my father did it, but I had a private dorm room because he knew intuitively I'd never make it. I never stayed in that dorm room. We could not have a car on campus. I had it parked at a friend's house. So my sophomore year, I said, my friends all came from school. They were a year older and they waited a year and we all wanted to live together and I had to live in a dorm. So here's another innovation of Tom. I went to the infirmary, made an appointment with a psychiatrist, went in smoking a cigarette. I don't smoke cigarettes, didn't smoke cigarettes. And I put on a show, one of the best performances of my life. And I still have the letter today where I was excused from the dorm by Dr. Ball because I told him I was going to lose my mind if I stayed in the dorm. Well, I scored because I'm living in this apartment with my friends, which probably in retrospect wasn't the best decision because we all were clearly having a wild time. That's what led to the first gay bar, led to this experience with Rita. And at that point, the bullying was secondary because I was someone else. That's not what we were older kids now. I could pick who I associated with. I wasn't forced to be with people. But it was a wild time of life. It definitely was, as the book says, the out of control part.
Tom, I'm going to go back and again play back your essence. Fiercely curious, innovative, expressive, sensitive, courageous. Like you're an artist. Like your archetype, your soul is the soul of an artist. How the heck did you go from this to Facebook, to telecom, to the corporate world? Like, how did that happen?
So, Kate, in the beautiful way you just said that and your masterful gathering of all those words, because I can't tell you to people, but look at me and say, are you an artist? I love what you just said.
You are.
Everything you just said is what I used to make that happen. So after I did a stint working, I took that job in that hospital, realized one day that my boss had been there 20 years, made $1 an hour more than me. This was not this was not the picture I had back when I was 5 in my little mind. I ended up going and working in a gay hotel, this famous gay hotel around the world at the time in Fort Lauderdale. One of my best friends, the same one that was in the show, his father owned this hotel. I went and did a stint there, and then I moved to Atlanta. And I decided in Atlanta I needed to have a real career. And so I was, of all things, managing a clinical lab in a private psychiatric hospital back when depression was being studied as being chemical imbalance or not. And
right.
Fascinating. I don't know how I even got in that. I had no experience doing that, but I think from working in hospitals, they knew I could talk it, right? Yeah. And I got this part-time job. I was buying a new car and I needed some money. And I got this part-time job at a company called MCI as a part-time customer service rep. You're also going to hear this sliver of service and all this as we start moving forward, even from back in those early days. And I was the star. They came to me after 6 weeks and said, we want to make you full-time. We want you to leave your job and come here. We have a career for you. I finally made the decision to do that. I quickly was a supervisor. I was on a fast track with this company. I was tapped to go one of 26 people around the world to go to corporate and work on a project that was supposed to be 3 months. I was there living in a hotel for 9 months, came back to my center where I worked and was promoted and launched their new silver, gold, platinum programs that we had at the time. Then at MCI at the corporate, I was tapped to come and run the department that took forward the project I was working on. and moved to Washington, D.C., which is when my really things took off. I was on a fast track with this company. I was in meetings where only vice presidents were as a senior manager. I went from that position. I moved and opened their first customer service center, commercial customer service center outside of Baltimore. Then I was tapped to go and be the director of the center I started in as a part-time rep. Then I went back to corporate leading customer service from the corporate standpoint. My brother died in 1985 of AIDS in San Francisco in the famous Ward 86 San Francisco General. It's a story you would not believe. It's chapter 9 in the book called Bubby. Back to where I was, I knew what my behavior had been. I decided I should get tested. I went to an anonymous clinic. I got tested and waited 7 long days to get that result. Went back, sat down with this woman. She had a trainee with her in this little room. I remember it was all wood like a box. And they started giving me the shtick and the spiel. And I said, stop, I just need the answer. She said, what do you think the answer is? I said, I know my behavior. I think I'm likely positive. She said, you are. I said, thank you. Started to leave. She said, you can't leave. We have to talk to you. I said, I'll be fine. I walked to my car on a sidewalk that felt like a roller coaster. I looked in the mirror I sat in the car in the rearview mirror, and I spoke to that virus and said these words. If you want to come to my party, welcome. If you think you're going to take me out, you're in for the fight of your life. I started the car and I went back to work.
Wow. Wow. I'm so sorry. So sorry. How old were you at this point?
I was probably in not quite 30, early 30s, probably early 30s. And I went back to work and acted like nothing happened. And about 6 weeks later, I went back to that doctor who told me one of the 3 times I've been given to 6 months to live. The first time he looked at me and said, you are going to die. Do you want to die at your desk, or do you want to do something you enjoy? I made one of the hardest decisions of my life, and I went on disability. I was on a fast track. Who knows where I would have gone to? I went on disability, Kate, but I never stopped working. I, along with 5 other guys, started the DC Buyers Club. We had nothing at the time. No one cared. We were the gay disease. We started the DC Buyers Club, think Dallas Buyers Club with Matthew McConaughey, little less Hollywood, same number of hookers. When you came in, the front room was information and a hug when nobody else would. But when you got to know you, we let you in the back room, and we had smuggled things in from around the world. We were injecting bovine thymus, doing strange enemas, taking drugs that we didn't know it because there was nothing. Interestingly enough, about that story of the 6 of us, not one of us died from AIDS.
Wow. You went covert. Wow, you took it on.
Yeah.
You took AIDS on yourself.
Yeah.
No one died of your 6.
Yeah. Then I realized if I had a chance in this watching everyone die around me, if I had a chance, I needed to either move to New York or San Francisco. That best childhood friend I talked about was dying of AIDS in San Francisco. My best friend, Donna, was having her baby, and I wanted to be a part of that. I was actually in the room when she was born. And I moved to San Francisco. You couldn't find a doctor. It was 1994. There were no doctors. You couldn't get an appointment. Everyone was dying. I was on a waiting list with all 3 of them. Got a phone call one day from one. There had been a cancellation. I went to that appointment. I remember standing in the door of this office and seeing this woman down a hall who said, I'm so glad you're here. I felt like I'm home. I later realized she didn't have her glasses on and had no idea who I was. That was just who Dr. Mary Romaine was.
It felt good in the moment.
It did, but here's what really was great. They took me in an exam room, and as I waited for her, believe it or not, on the wall was a photograph of my apartment building, my apartment in the apartment building in San Francisco. It was unique, up in the air between two buildings and looked like it floated. And her sister was a photographer. At that moment, I knew there had been an intervention far beyond anything that I created. That day, I was put in the hospital for 2 weeks. And fortunately, made it through that and went through a number of horrific years of full-blown AIDS. But I didn't stop. I ran clinical trials in her doctor's office. I took all those drugs that I was treating people for. We were this amazing team because I knew what they couldn't tell her or they'd be taken off the drug. So I could nurse them through the nausea I was having, telling me this will get better. Don't say these words. Right. Say this. And then I one day decided to do the AIDS ride. I rode my bike from San Francisco to LA. But before that, I took a course that led to, believe it or not, a course back 28 years ago. I'm now the CEO of the company that came out of that course. I had 6 months to live when I took that course. It changed my life. I did the AIDS ride. What I want to share with you, Kate, and then I'll take a pause for where you want to take this, is in late 1999, I was told this is as good as it gets. I had 9 T cells. I named them. I asked people to take care of them. I had a cushy apartment, a nice disability check, and I was said, this is the best it will get. I remember thinking, oh, really? Watch this. I had been on disability through the whole internet revolution. I started interviewing for jobs. The doctor said it'll kill you. The disability company gave me an extra year to fall back on because they thought you'll never do it. I interviewed in the middle of the .com craze. I was walking in Union Square one day and got a phone call and was offered an executive position in a .com. I knew nothing about the internet. I accepted it. I believe I was levitating. The next thought I had was, what will I wear? Walked in a men's store, walked 3 suits. Against all odds, I went and took this job. I knew I was bright. I knew I'd figure it out. Here's the best part of this story. Within months, I had 200 T cells. It's a marker that the opportunist infections can't get you. I got to come off a lot of horrific drugs. It began that career that no one of those companies know throughout all the ones I told you, how sick I was the whole time. When I went to a meeting, it wasn't about where's the room, it's about where's the bathroom. And that began the journey of me going back to work that then created the business suits that I told you about earlier.
Facebook. So remarkable. I have a couple of big questions, and I want to save them, Tom. Give us the additional context of the 2 other health-defying moments, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about what happened. So what are the other health?
Yeah, I've had I'm in my 37th year with HIV. I had 10 years of full-blown AIDS. I actually started back to work with full-blown AIDS.
Right.
And so I was sick during that. I was sick while I was at those startups that I was at. I was sick at Walmart.com. I was sick at Palm. I was sick when I interviewed for Facebook, which is a great story. And then both grandfathers had prostate cancer. My mother had breast cancer. It was a given. I was watched like a hawk. And sure enough, one day, PSA is high, biopsies come back, I have prostate cancer. Turns out everybody thought it would be hereditary. It wasn't. It was soma, which I like to call a malfunction of the code. Mm-hmm. I had my prostate removed. In a year, it metastasized in my neck.
Wow. When was this?
This was towards the end of Facebook. as I was leaving Facebook and went to be the chief support officer of a company, and was working at the dating site, had the surgery, the prostate surgery, and was supposed to be in the hospital for about 5 days. The morning of the second day, the doctor came in and said this to me. He said, I understand you asked the nurses to unplug your IV pump. And I said, yeah. He said, why? And I said, well, as you can see, I needed to plug in my power strip. He said, well, why did you plug in your power strip? I said, well, I needed to use my computer and my phone so I could get back to work. And he looked at me and said, if you're feeling that good, you can go home. I went back to work in diapers.
Of course you did.
Yes, of course I did. Yes, of course I did. Went back to work in diapers, and thus began my journey with metastatic cancer, which will be in the third book of the series, if you're interested in knowing later about it. And my journey with metastatic cancer. I've had enough radiation, Kate, that I glow in the dark. You could put me in a room.
Hey, Tom. You've been glowing in the dark since you were born.
Yeah, I could be a nightlight in the room.
You are one special soul. So keep going. Keep going. So you've got this persistent cancer condition.
Yeah. I think I've been through 10 series of radiation. I've been on every treatment known to man. I refused chemo. In fact, the first oncologist I went was my 12th oncologist. After going through 11 others, I came back to him and he goes, you still haven't done chemo? I said, told you I wasn't going to do chemo. I've done everything. In fact, the last time I was given 6 months to live, the scans came back and they said, you've got cancer in 5 places. We can't do anything for you. You know what happened? I chuckled. You want to upset a few doctors, chuckle when they tell you you've got 6 months to live. But what happened is that little voice came up in my ear and said, watch this. So what I did is I found a doctor at UCLA. I found some treatments that still were in trials and stuff, immunotherapy that hadn't even been out yet. I did 2 of them at once. I flew down there once a week and went through these infusions and flew back home. And I remember when I did it, they said, your insurance won't cover this. And I said, okay. And they said, it'll be $450,000. I found the money, paid them.
Wow.
It's my life, right?
Yeah.
Watch this, right? You have to live with it. You have to be able to go into it, take the risk. You can't have resilience and reinvention without taking the risk. Mm-hmm. So here's the great news about that. I have no idea whether that treatment did anything, but I'm still here. But after it was all over, I called the business office one day and I said, I need you to file it on insurance. And they said, it's not going to pay. I said, I know that. I just need the explanation of benefit for tax purposes. They filed it. The insurance paid for it. They had to give me all my money back. So on that, I share that story because in the presence, when we're given these death sentences, whatever they may be in life, I call them terrible gifts. I'd love to tell you about that. I call them terrible gifts because something horrible where we step in and whatever it may be, and we're facing the worst possible thing where we use our own power is when we'll call it universe, love, God, whatever you want to call it, steps in and must support us. My current oncologist calls me a clinical trial of one, and here's why. During AIDS, I created something called a healing wheel. Think of a wheel with spokes. The spokes were to Western medicine, Eastern medicine, acupuncture, massage, back on and on and on. I was the hub. I made the decisions. When I got metastatic cancer, I said, what am I going to do? I'm going to create that healing wheel. I didn't do what people told me to do. They were my advisors. I learned enough that I could have the difficult conversations. I made the decisions.
Wow. How many times have you been told you've got 6 months to go?
3.
And here you are.
I'm still here.
How old are you now?
I'll be 72 this year in October.
How do you feel, Tom?
I feel terrific. Every illness I have is under control. I will always have HIV likely, maybe not. I uphold the hope for that. That's one thing I learned was if you can hang on long enough, something's coming. The cancer I'll always have metastatic cancer lightly, but it's all under control. My labs look great. I couldn't be more engaged. I couldn't be, you heard what I'm doing today. People ask me, where do you get the energy? How do you possibly do it? I had a doctor the other day and said to me, Tom, we're on Zoom, and he goes, I'm looking at your chart, and I look up at you, and I already know everything's okay, but you don't match this chart. If someone sees this chart and you walk in a room, they're going to ask you, where's the patient? And I said, thank you. And he said, have you ever thought about retiring? I said, I already tried that. I got stuff to do. I got work to do.
You retire. Give us your quote again. You
I
retired
being retired to be inspired.
You retired from being retired to be inspired.
Yes.
Tom, you are inspired and inspiring. Let's 3 times 6 months to live. So I'm capturing your essence, and I'm also trying to capture what's happened in your lived experience and your family and genetics, and I'm trying to determine whether the resilience in you or the defiance in you was a result of being the youngest in a very, very humble home, combined with the essence of your hyper curiosity and hyper creativity and innovativeness and this deep love which manifests itself as service to others. And I still come up asking the question, how did he do it? Like, I get it. Like, I see you and I feel you, and I think we all do watching this episode. Like, what do you attribute it to? Like,
I love this question, Kate. My first answer wants to be, well, I'm the varmint. What did you expect? But my real answer is, I get asked this. I had the best medical care. I had access to the best treatment. My skin color gives me privilege. But underneath it all, there's one thing that is true. I believed I could.
Wow. There's the word believe and there's the word know. And we think the word no is arrogant. Yet I sense that your knowing, you call it believe. My sense is your knowing comes from an extraordinarily humble and deep place.
Yes. I learned so much about this experience in life. I'm going to knock on wood as I say this. If I were to drop dead right now, I promise I won't. I will have lived a full life. I will not say, I wish I had done this. I wish I had done that. I've already dealt with the dying part. I'm very aware that I have work to do here. This experience that I've had is something that I am here. The purpose of my life now is to serve others, to share some of this, to help others through these transitions in their lives. It's what my practice is all about. I have a bunch of keynotes, but 2 of them that I'll share with you. One of them that I hope to do a TED Talk with is called Living Fully While Dying. The first phase was living fully without regard to dying. The second phase for me was living fully while being told I was dying. The third phase is living fully knowing that I was dying all along. You see, when we're born, we're going to die. Some of us get longer, some of us get shorter, some of us get this, some of us that get that. It's not about that. It's what are we going to do with it? My book, when you open it up, is a quote from Maya Angelou. Every storm runs out of rain. You see every storm behind it, no matter how bad it is. I just went through the one in Maui. The sun is shining. The storms in our lives are the same. What the storm does, just like the storm from the sky, is creates fertile ground to plant. The storms in our lives create the same fertile ground. What I ask people, what are you going to plant? The other thing that I've learned is that giving to others, the cliche of what you receive, is not a cliche, it's real. I created something called the philanthropic mindset. I had people coming to me saying, when I'm a philanthropist, when I have money, I want to be a philanthropist. And it made me think about what that meant. So what that led to was me creating this keynote and coaching people to see that your smile, a hello, sitting with someone that's in need or in pain is a philanthropic gesture. You don't have to have your name on a building, write a check, or go to a gala. There's these ways of having philanthropy in your life through how you move through the world, how you love and how you give and share with others. The difference is when you give that smile or hello and you have an expectation, it's no longer a philanthropic gesture. It's when you do it without expectation of anything in return.
Selfless. Wow. Talk about your experience with the word fear. When I think of this third, living fully while we're dying, we are all dying from the day we're born, is what you're sharing with us.
Yes.
And fear of death or fear of not having lived fully are the two fundamental fears. Talk about how you, as a being, experience fear, Tom.
Here's what I've learned about fear. By the way, I think it's the same for this thing we all call the imposter syndrome. Fear is simply this: an opportunity for growth.
It's our shadow speaking to us.
Yeah. What I find is so many of my clients, so many people that I interact with live in the past as if there's going to be a do-over, like our little phones where we watch a video and we can press that little button that says go back 10 seconds. That's not life. When you're living in the past of what happened to you, as difficult as it may be to do what I'm saying, carrying it around like a ball and chain on your ankle, you're missing out on the now of your life. I love to say you're missing out on the butterfly that might fly by, or something beautiful that you might miss, or an experience with another human that you might miss. I also see, let's don't get too far in the future, except for those things we have to do, food in the refrigerator, those kinds of things, the kids are cared for, whatever it may be. Because you see, we got up this morning. Some people didn't.
Mm-hmm. Here you are, 72, living fully, knowing that this lifetime will be over at some point, with this beautiful essence of curiosity, of love, of kindness, of innovative, expressive, playful, and defiant, all in the same beautiful human being. And I hope any corporate leader or any person in a formal leadership job is listening to your story today going, oh my goodness, the people that are the most innovative and the most progressive in my company are artists in disguise. The more I allow that artist to bloom inside my company, the more, and with love at the center and service at the center, the more we can make a difference for humanity in the world. And for any human being listening to you, I hope, well, I certainly am, taking away this feeling of honor for you and the life that you are living. And this gift, the power of the terrible gift, the power of the collapse that results in choice,
Yes.
choice to live.
I'm, I must tell you about the terrible gift.
Tell us about
Terrible gifts. Things happen to us in life. Someone we love dies. A relationship ends. A pet dies. We get sick. A disaster happens and does something we think we'll never get over. Terrible. Terrible. We wouldn't wish them on anyone.
no.
What I know to be true is whether it's a month, a year, 5 years, a gift will come from it. I know a woman who was an Olympiad level sports person. She went in for a simple operation, got MRSA, had her leg cut off. As she sat in the wheelchair, she looked at the cane and the walking stick she was using and thought, how ugly is it that this is what people see and think of me? She fashioned a cane out of acrylic in her kitchen oven, the handle around a wine bottle, which I love. This woman now owns an international company making the most beautiful canes and walking sticks so that when you see people using them, that's what you see versus someone disability or handicap. She got a terrible gift.
Yeah, I refer to terrible gifts as collapses. There's moments in your life where you collapse, and then you have a choice to cope and mask it, or a choice to surrender and sit with it. And in that surrender, find our next calling or awaken to the next level, including what your new offering of services to the world. And her story is a good example where she would have gone through a terrible gift and collapse. And somehow, through her journey, found what she was meant to bring to the world next.
Yes.
And every one of that has that available to us. Yeah. And unfortunately, we usually find them at the bottom of a terrible gift or collapse.
Yes. I will never forget, Kate. I was in 1985. My brother was dying in Ward 86. I had called my parents, one of the most difficult calls I ever made in my life, to tell them their son was gay and dying of AIDS. You need to come here. And that scene was like, I don't know, it was like the scene in Gone with the Wind after the war. It was all black with the smoke. That's what it felt like. There was a lot of love there, but you didn't know, nobody that went in came out. And there was this framed poster on the wall, and it was a rope with a knot at the end. And it said, which we've probably all heard this by now, but it was my first time back in 85. And it said, if you feel that you're at the end of your rope, tie a knot and hold on. I think we get to these terrible places in life, these collapses. There's something about the experience that will change us. There's something about the experience that allows us to take risks, use resilience, which I think of as nothing more than a muscle, like a bicep or a tricep. Use it, it gets stronger, to be able to reinvent ourselves. These experiences are meant for something. This is called life. When people tell me life is like this for them, that feels like a flat line on one of those hospital shows. Life is a series. For me, this wave is where you have an opportunity to learn and grow, express it, and be smart enough to know the next wave's coming.
I describe the world, Tom, given my banker history and knowledge of economics and having worked in different countries, that we're experiencing 4 existential crises: social fracture, economic divide, planet degradation, and the proliferation of disinformation and information now being accelerated by AI. And I do believe that AI can do good, and it also cannot do good. It can hurt us. So we've got these 4 converging forces at the root of what's happening in the world, creating a level of anxiety and fear that I don't believe human beings were meant to handle. So And the unfortunate, it's not even unfortunate, the deeply sad part is it comes with a mental health pandemic. A mental health pandemic. And it comes with authoritarianism and a whole lot of other things that we're experiencing. So how has Tom every time created the frickin' knot at the end of the rope? Like, where does that, what is your source of light when you are at the bottom of the rope, the moment of collapse? Tell us again, give us more color on how you find hope, purpose, strength to tie that knot and to ultimately find your next awakening and next act of service.
Ooh, that's a wonderful question. I'm going to reflect on what you said about our world today. It's a parallel for your question. What we need most, obviously, is unity and to care for one another.
Love.
Remember that we all laugh, we all want love, we all bleed, we all are far more the same than we'll ever be different. I look at these times of trying to say to myself, let's zoom back really far and take a bird's eye history of a continuum of time, take ourselves out of this existence called our life, look across. I believe that what's happening today will teach us lessons that will be one of the big shifts of society and humanity that will remind us, let's don't ever do this again. Mm-hmm. The unfortunate part is we forget about things like the Holocaust and these horrible events as time goes on and need to be reminded. Mm-hmm. But I'm hoping this in the continuum of time is something here to teach us something that those of us here are experiencing, fighting, dying, surviving. For me personally, to answer your question, I don't see there's another option. Today, resilience, as I said, is like a muscle for me. You use it, it gets stronger. I know everybody can't do what I'm getting to say. I couldn't in the beginning. But if I get the scan or the test that says, time to do it again, let's go to radiation, or maybe I'm going to hear another time, you got 6 months. I look at the phone at the time and I say, you got 30, 40 minutes tops. Go for it. Moan, scream, yell at God, cry, whatever it is, and then get on with it. Because again, you're not going to change it. What happened, happened. Now what are you going to do with it? And I'll share with you something that's very simple for me that I remind myself. If nothing else is true, it feels better.
It feels better in every moment. It feels better. And when you're living in that moment, it feels better. Wow, what a gift. What a gift you are.
Thank you.
A gift of hope, a gift of inspiration, a gift of so many life lessons, Tom. And anything other than being alive in the moment. It's not even, I was going to say to you, you choose not to die. No, that's not how I read you. You choose every moment to be alive.
Yes.
Versus worrying about whether you should take your life or not. No, I choose to be alive fully in this moment. What a lesson and what a gift. And every moment, Tom, you choose to be alive in this moment. You are tying a knot at the end of the rope. And every moment, each of us do that and do it from a place of love and gratitude. Collectively, we are creating the moment of inflection for humanity and the world. A moment where we will choose kindness and choose curiosity and choose to listen, to deeply to understand, to choose inclusivity, but not inclusivity, DE&I inclusivity of humanity from a place of love and kindness, to learn, to grow, to be better. That is the pathway forward for humanity, and it's the pathway forward for each of us. What is your hope for humanity, Tom? Your wish, your message?
Yeah, my wish for humanity is that out of what's going on in the world today, two things happen. We remember that horrible things have happened before. We're just in this one. That never forget the evidence of the things in your life you've survived. We're presented with new challenges, and it's so palpable in the moment. We forget the things that we achieved, the things that we overcome that allowed us to still be here. That's the individual level. On a larger level, as we march in the streets, as we raise our banners, as we do whatever it might be, for some of us, it's lighting a candle, chanting, or praying. Whatever it is, that somehow, collectively, the energy of that, whether it's love, God, universe, I care not what you call it, pulls that energy becomes stronger and stronger and shifts sort of the pendulum, shifts the seesaw. I think we're seeing it happen today. I don't care about it politically as much as I do about how we treat each other, about humanity, about our desire for people to have better, for our children to grow up and have more than just a good experience in a good world, but a fuller life, fuller expression to keep the magic of what's been going on in humanity alive. And I think a big part of that is the word unity. We do not have to agree. We do not have to look alike. We do not have to be first. What we need to do is recognize that whatever our path, we're all in this together. I make it a point when I walk. I was at a car dealership recently. I was talking to the general manager because I bought a few cars there to him to express how much they appreciate it. Wah, wah, wah. When I walked out of that office, I encountered the housekeeper with her dust mop on the floors. That's who I went to and said, thank you for making this so beautiful. Thank you for cleaning this office. I share that because let us have respect. Let us honor all the people wherever they are, and never forget that no matter what someone's going through, no matter what you see, people are likely at a point of doing the best they can at that point. But more importantly, your philanthropic mindset, your philanthropic gesture just may be the thing that can lift them up. Just don't have any big expectations about what you get in return.
Wow. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Our service to humanity is to be love, to live from a place of love and kindness and curiosity and hope. And together we'll tie the knot at the end of the rope.
Yes.
And together we'll awaken and we'll emerge even more whole, more complete, more loving,
yes,
more sustainable than before.
And never forget when you see someone who does not have that strength to tie that knot. Don't tie it for them, but you can certainly be there.
Hold their
To
hand.
encourage them, hold their hand, lift them up so they can reach it. Don't tie the knot for them.
That is such an important message, Tom. And I've learned that lesson humbly because I felt so much privilege for the love and embrace that I've received through my collapses and my journey, that initially I felt it was my job to save others. And that's rather arrogant, because we don't know the journey of anyone other than ourselves. And, the Sincerely Show is just an offering of service, stories that open hearts and minds that might convey an inspiration or a lesson that helps someone tie their knot and helps someone realize that they're loved and they're not alone. Because fundamentally, as human beings, every one of us are connected, and every one of us wants to be loved, wants to be included, wants to belong. So it's the holding of the hand and the offering of love, not the tying of the knot.
Yes, yes.
They'll
And to remember,
they'll find it within them to tie the knot.
yeah, and remember, we see people in their crisis or their experience or whatever's going on with them, and often we see the answer. It's obvious to us what they could do. Know in your heart, they don't see it. Be the one that holds the space, that gives the encouragement, that does something to help them find their answer. Just because you see it, they don't see it. It's something I do in my practice called the haystack method. I believe people have their own answers. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. My job is to hold the space so they can clear away the hay to find their answer, the needle.
Thank you, Tom. What a beautiful and profound conversation. Thank you for the gift of your story, the gift of your love, the gift of your service to humanity, to the world. I'm just sitting here reflecting on all that you've experienced in this life and how you live so fully, Tom. And what a gift to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kate. What a delightful conversation. See, I got up this morning, my feet hit the ground. I said, thank you. I woke up and look what I got to do today. Look who I got to meet.
Any closing words for our guests today?
Yes, of course. Remember what I just said. You woke up this morning. We didn't scratch the surface yet on gratitude and manifestation. There's other things we could really go into. What I really want to remind people of is this idea of not living in the past. It's so easy to do. When you're there, you're not here. Be here now.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, all of you, for joining us today. Thank you again, Tom. I cannot wait for our next conversation. And again, you are such a blessing to me and to all of us. Thank you again, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here for this conversation. This is exactly why the Sincerely Show exists. To witness real human stories. Stories of individuals that have dedicated their life to service and contribution. Stories of people who have walked through darkness and heaviness and found their way back to themselves, to their deeper selves, towards a place that is more whole, and again, to a life of service and contribution. My hope is that something in what you just heard helped you feel less alone, more hopeful, and perhaps closer to meaning and purpose in your own life. This is a judgment-free space. If something moved you, inspired you, or sparked a reflection of your own, I would genuinely love to hear it. Share what this conversation opened in your heart. That is the kind of exchange that makes this community, the Sincerely community, what it is. It's what makes Sincerely, genuinely Sincerely. What I ask is that we hold each other with the same love and kindness that brought us here. This is a place of curiosity, not criticism, of witnessing, not judging. If you are sharing, share from your own experience and from a place of love and kindness. That is always enough. If this conversation resonated with you, please share it with someone who you'd like to hear it. That is the most generous thing you can do, not just for the show, but for the people in your life who are quietly looking for this, looking to feel less alone, for hope, for meaning, for lessons. And before we close, this conversation is for reflection and perspective only. It should not be relied upon as therapy or professional advice. Please always seek qualified support where needed before making any decisions based on what you heard here today, or heard or observed at Sincerely Overall. This content is also subject to our full terms and conditions, which you can find on our website at sincerelyinc.com. Thank you again for joining the Sincerely Show. Until next time, please take good care. Thank you so much.